Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. Well, I guess it looks like after more than 300 years, Bank of England is about ready to go bust. Stacy.
Right. Well, certainly, in the genesis block of Bitcoin was the Times headline from 2009, January 3rd, 2009, that said Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. So this is funny to come full circle. As hyper Bitcoinization is setting in, as the First Nation has just made Bitcoin legal tender in their country, that's El Salvador. And this is a headline that's happened in the last 2 weeks. We didn't get to it until today, but it's relevant to some of the other headlines we're covering here. Bitcoin could trigger financial meltdown, warns Bank of England deputy. This was somebody named Sir Cunliffe. Yeah, so he's complaining that, just like subprime, Bitcoin might cause the financial system to collapse. But, if Bank of England is worried, my theory is that if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear from Bitcoin, right? If like bad debts, lots of fraud in your financial system, lots of money printing, you have nothing to fear from Bitcoin.
Look, all the major financial scandals went through the City of London, went through the Bank of England. Even the Bank of England was implicated in the precious markets rigging scheme and the LIBOR rigging scheme. It went right through the Bank of England. AIG, Lehman Brothers, the subprime crisis, Bernie Madoff, they all went through the City of London and, by extension, the Bank of England. It really is, as I've been saying for many years, the global center, the epicenter of financial fraud. And since 1694, they've been using money printing to enslave people. And now their day has come where we can turn the key and throw away the key and shut the Bank of England down. Thank God.
Right. But the thing is that Bitcoin is far more heavily regulated than the banks. So the banks are regulated by the central banks, by the financial conduct authority sort of people. And it's a revolving door. They're friends, they're mates. They don't want to put their mate in jail. Nobody wants to do that. Whereas Bitcoin is regulated by the users, and there's millions of them, by the nodes, by the miners, by all participants. If you're a Bitcoiner, if you have one Satoshi, you're a regulator of Bitcoin, right? The consensus algorithm is regulation by consensus. So that's already built into that protocol. So let's look at some of the headlines. Max mentioned, all the scandals of the past. Bernie Madoff's fraud went through there. AIG scandal, their defrauding went through there. MF Global went through there. And I want to call your attention back to Repo 105. Early days of Keiser Report, we covered Repo 105, and that was Lehman Brothers used that. So did MF Global, but Lehman Brothers did a lot of their hidden debts. Remember, if you have nothing to hide, like bad debts, you use Repo 105. So Repo 105 was a type of loophole in accounting for repurchase, i.e. repo, transactions that the now extinguished Lehman Brothers exploited in an attempt to hide true amounts of leverage during its times of trouble during the 2007-2008 financial crisis. In this repurchase agreement, since updated to close the loophole, a company could classify a short-term loan as a sale and subsequently use the cash proceeds from the sale to reduce its liabilities. So in London, you were allowed to have infinite Repo 105, essentially infinite rehypothecation via Repo 105. In the United States, that was never allowed. It was only at 114% versus like 1,000%, 10,000%, anything you could do with this Repo 105 through the Bank of England's territory called London.
Right, as we've been covering for years, countries and companies outsource their financial fraud to the City of London and the Bank of England. That's their primary source of revenue in that country. And post-Brexit, that's been shut off. That's one of the reasons why I said Brexit was so dangerous, is that they have shut that down and the revenues have collapsed from the money laundering and the scandals that the Bank of England and the City of London are involved with. Look, Bitcoin was created and invented specifically to kill central banks. It says so in the Genesis block. They make a reference to the Bank of England. When the Bank of England starts squirming and they start whining that, oh my God, Bitcoin is an existential threat to our existence, everyone who yearns for freedom in the world today should let out a collective hurrah, because we're finally getting rid of the worst actor on the financial scene for 300 years.
Allegedly, right? I mean, there are like the Bank of England's, the moms and dads of those guys who run the Bank of England, they think they're doing a great job. So to be fair and balanced, you have to say that their moms and dads think they're doing a great job. But speaking of moms and dads, well, here's a image of the Queen. She's on the 20-pound note here. Welcome to Britain, the bank scam capital of the world, says Reuters. Says Reuters.
Says Reuters.
It's not us. Allegedly, Reuters is saying allegedly that welcome to Britain, allegedly, the bank scam capital of the world, allegedly.
Right. They go into how most of the financial skullduggery around the world first appears in England, and then it kind of migrates to other territories and other countries. They're the greatest innovator in the world of financial fraud. That's the innovation that they bring to the global marketplace, is how to rip people off using our banking tricks. Thank you, Queen Elizabeth, for harboring all of these folks on your fine island.
Allegedly.
Oh, yeah, allegedly. Mm-hmm, exactly.
Allegedly a fine island, right? So, according to this data, so you mentioned that they lead the world in innovation and fraud.
Allegedly,
according to the so Reuters alleges, I have to say, right? And then the thing is, they mentioned that there was a record of 754 million pounds or $1 billion stolen in the first 6 months of this year, which is up 30% from the same period in 2020. So it's certainly going parabolic. There's, of course, a lot more money being printed to steal.
Well, it's a direct result of Brexit, because you've removed some of the EU regulations now. So the people on Plague Island, the banksters on Plague Island, are free to engage in toxic banking tricks at record levels. I warned you against this. It's not because I love the EU. It's because I know what goes on in the City of London.
Nevertheless, it is increased by 30%, which is about the amount of money printing that has happened as well over the past 30 years, the past year, right? So here's the quote. Again, allegedly. It is a real quote, not allegedly, but they're alleging this. This is from Ayelet Biggert-Levin. She's the vice president of product strategy at US-based cybersecurity firm BioCatch, which provides anti-fraud technologies to banks. And this person says, quote, the most sophisticated fraud tends to start in the United Kingdom and then move 2 years later to the US and then around the world. One thing in particular that they're showing in the United Kingdom is that these fraudsters there will set up a website that kind of mimics a well-known entity and keep it running for years and communicate with some of the people they're going to steal from, defraud, for months and months on end. And they seem legitimate because you have an ongoing relationship with them. They don't contact you with an email saying, hi, I'm a prince. Can you send me, $100,000? They have a long-standing relationship that they then say, okay, how about this bond? It's secure, the Queen invests in this sort of thing, like that sort of scam. But it takes months or years for them to even get to that point where they're going to ask you for that. So this is one of the things that they highlight in this article.
Right. It's all up and down the fraud spectrum, from petty fraud, credit card scams, all the way up to major derivatives trading, insider trading, market manipulations, yes, Forex manipulation, LIBOR manipulation, all with the Bank of England's thumbprints all over it all the time, 24/7.
Allegedly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was pretty convincing. The precious metals manipulation going on in the, in London, that was pretty much an ironclad case.
Well, LIBOR's gone, right? LIBOR's gone because the United States took it away from the UK because it was so fraudulent there, right? It was so rigged. So it got too rigged even for the Americans.
So in the cases where you don't need to say allegedly, because it's patently true, you have to be careful, because then they'll come back and say, well, you're engaging in hate speech because you're talking about the truth, and the truth is hurting us. So we have to be also careful of that, because they're very, very fragile over there in England about hearing anything that's would be considered anywhere else truthful, because it hurts. Oh.
Well, no, you have to be fair and balanced. And to be fair and balanced, the people who are plundering, like that got the $1 billion in the first 6 months, they love it. They think it's a great system. So just to be fair, they do love it. And there are people that like it. Now, cutting back to Bitcoin, because we said Bitcoin has millions of regulators. All of the users of the platform are the regulators. There's no shenanigans that do not escape the blockchain. We could all see the on-chain analysis, and we know what's going on, right? Well, there is in El Salvador, as we said, they've now got Bitcoin as legal tender. So here's just some information. Nayib Bukele, the president of the country, he's very open on Twitter, and he's always tweeting all sorts of stuff and, trolling the IMF and England and stuff like that. But here's one thing he said about 2 new Chivo facts, and Chivo is their state-run wallet, their Bitcoin wallet. He said, 1, people are inserting way more US dollars to buy Bitcoin than what they are withdrawing from the Chivo ATMs. Any media outlet can independently confirm this by visiting the ATMs. And 2, today we received 24,076 remittances, adding up to over $3 million in one day. So $3 million in remittances in one day via Bitcoin, and that's saving an enormous amount of money, millions of dollars for the country in 1 year. A big percentage of their actual GDP will be saved through cutting out the middlemen. The middlemen, the butlers, the financial middlemen who do the repo 105s, do the money remittances, stealing 10% from the poorest people on earth.
Top hat and tail, stealing people's money. That scares the bejesus out of the Bank of England when they see a small country like that doing something that is going to, like I said, the Bank of England's days are now here within sight to being finished. 300 years in existence, goodbye, we won't miss you.
Adios.
Go away. Hey, we're going to take a break. When we come back, much more coming your way. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Rodolfo Andragnes. He's of the LaBitConf, the earliest Bitcoin conference in Latin America. Rodolfo, welcome.
Thank you, Max. How are you doing?
Great to see you. Now, LaBitConf is heading to El Salvador in 2 weeks. But before we get into that event, tell us about the history of LaBitConf. When, why, where did it all start?
Actually, it's the longest running conference in the world. Yes, Bitcoin conference. It's 2013. And it started when in Argentina, we had these concerns, these restrictions about getting money into dollars into the country or buying dollars. So when we did the first conference in 2013, most of the people in the world were watching and aiming to Argentina like the big place where this could grow. We had huge inflation, currency controls and stuff like that. And we achieved to bring the biggest and top speakers at that time. And since then, we kept being the most relevant conference in the region with an additional concept, which has to do with experience itself, yes, which is beyond the content. It's also mixing the culture of the place. So it's a very good experience as an event itself, but always with very high quality speakers. And you've been in our conference, I think, twice already. So thank you for that.
As you point out, in the region, Argentina, of course, is an example of a country where they've had to they've had several currency collapses and bailouts, and it's an obvious place for Bitcoin. But the country that really was the first mover to make Bitcoin legal tender was El Salvador. That's where the BitConf is this this year in El Salvador. And, tell us what your thoughts are. They're the first mover. They're already reaping huge benefits, Rodolfo.
Yes, actually, one thing I keep listening is people going down to El Salvador and doing business in El Salvador. They're like very open to do stuff. Everyone goes and meets the government and banks and businesses, yes, and everybody's very open to do stuff with them. So I think it's a very good excuse to take the opportunity of going this Bitcoin week that is being hosted from the 15th to the 20th of November, and be able to connect, to do stuff there, and to live the experience of talking with anyone on the streets and being able to talk about Bitcoin. It's like wherever you go, you can ask, and awareness is 100%. Beyond the fact that you have 4 million people already using the Chivo wallet, you really get like a sensation of Bitcoin is the thing here, yes, to talk about and to see how it goes. Yes, you can go to a retail store and to a drugstore, yes, and you could eventually get paid in Bitcoin or
right. It's like a giant Bitcoin conference. The entire country It's just everyone's gone Bitcoin crazy, and the impact is remarkable. Now, it's interesting because President Bukele of El Salvador, he has gifted his country unconfiscatable, immutable, perfect money, given his people individual sovereignty. And yet there are those who are calling him a dictator at the same time, which seems mutually exclusive. Either you give your population freedom or you're a dictator. You can't be both. How do you see it?
To be true, this is one of the reasons I liked to invite you, you and Stacy to the event, because this is a concern in all the Bitcoin community, yes, and even though I think that Bukele, it's not I think I know, Bukele is very aware of what they think about him, yes, and about what Bitcoin brings to the people. He knows about freedom. He knows about the empowerment of the people, yes, and for the people next to him, yes, I realize that he is willing to go through this process, yes, and I think he believes in this like a tool for taking El Salvador somewhere else. Yes, he's really. You need to see the plans he's working on, a full Bitcoin city. It's a full scope of ideas behind this, but it's very. I mean, yes, he has this authoritarian attitude. Yes, I can say it's not, but he has like a full plan. No, it's not only Bitcoin. It's not only remittances. It's like a full concept moving forward. So I think it's like sometimes when you take decisions, yes, you need to take decisions of things that you plan that will be kept in the long term. No, not like, okay, this government changes and then everything changes. He really is planning in a long term with Bitcoin. So doing stuff and investing in El Salvador, I think, yes, could be like a good long-term approach.
Right. I think back to America's revolution and when they declared independence from being the colony of England. And I think of Bukele as the George Washington of the region, really. You know, if you go back to the American Revolution, only a third of the colonialists wanted freedom. Another third were ambivalent. And another third didn't want to be free at all. So, this is what happens. Freedom fighters are not always seen as in a positive light. People don't appreciate them until after the revolution. But nevertheless, were you surprised about El Salvador as being the first country in the region to do this? Why were they the first?
Actually, it's not so hard to understand why, and it could have been them, could have been Ecuador eventually. And why these countries? Because they don't have their own currency. If Argentina takes this move, Bitcoin would fight against the bad currency in which the country needs to create debt. Yes, but in the case of El Salvador, they don't. They had already their currency being dollars. Yes, which is not my best election anyway, but so the only way of getting more money is either getting loans, yes, from governments and stuff like that, or making smarter things and creating more value, yes, from scratch. So actually they were like the best country to take this decision. They are not fighting against their own currency. Yes, this is not that it's very hard for a country where they already have a currency that they mint, yes, to stop having the power of minting and creating debt from the minting and from taking commitments that they can't pay and they just mint to pay them. Now, in El Salvador, that was not the situation. So actually, I think it's one of the best countries to work on this concept. They're not fighting against their own currency.
The folks who got the Chivo wallet with $30 with the Bitcoin, they're already up approximately 100% since that day. The country also bought Bitcoin for its reserves at the central bank, and that is now positive as well.
50% up already, yeah. I think.
We are, and when you see Bukele on Twitter trolling the IMF and essentially mocking them and sticking his finger up to them and saying, hey, IMF, go to hell. Doesn't that give people in the region some confidence that the days of being colonized by the IMF in America are over?
One of my approaches, one of the things I would like to discuss in the conference is very like Bitcoin, here it comes, no? Topics. But one of the things I think is that the old recipes, yes, are not working anymore. All recipes that multilateral banks, yes, and financial organizations, they are not creating the value in the people as much as having Bitcoin in their holdings, yes, is creating. If you give money to the country, then the country decides where it goes. If you give Bitcoin to the people, yes, then the money goes to the people. The value goes straight to the people. For me, Bitcoin this is also one of the topics, for me, Bitcoin is the universal income concept in a good way, not in a printing money for giving people for not doing nothing. It's, you did an effort today, yes, and when value comes, you will, when the asset that you get, yes, for the effort of today gets more valuable, then you will get distribution of income. So I think things are looking good. Yes, we know Bitcoin goes ups and downs, but for all the Bitcoiners, it's hard to not agree with what is happening there. Even though you can have your concerns about the president, even though you could have your concerns about El Salvador, I've been supporting Bitcoin for this situation since 2013, and I can be more happy about this happening. I think this is giving, as you said the exact word, gifting the Salvadorian people the opportunity of being of having eventually the best currency in the world for the future.
The reason there are so many people in El Salvador without bank accounts is not because they don't want bank accounts, it's because the fee of starting a bank account is prohibitively expensive because the banks don't care about people. The banks are draconian, predatory monsters. But now with Bitcoin, everyone can have their own bank. They can be their own bank, and they're happily getting their own bank. More than half the country has now got that Bitcoin wallet, and that's growing at an incredible rate every week. And this is the attitude in the country has completely changed to being one of relentlessly optimistic, as Stacy likes to say. And that has a huge impact on the country as well. They're going to start mining Bitcoin. They're going to be $1 billion worth of revenue from their volcano mines coming in, which helps this country as well. Now, are Argentina and other countries that were slow to move, are they now going to be forced to jump in here and change, or are they going to be left behind?
I think that governments can decide whatever they want to decide as long as they keep being in the government. But I think that the biggest concern for other countries is losing the minting power of debt. No, so I think this is like it's easy for us, not easy. It's a strong decision, yes, but it's easy for El Salvador, harder for others. I think though that this is like the example. Once you have the example, several will follow, but not mainly in Latin America, everywhere, anywhere in the world. Even though you could have like more reasons in Latin America for this to occur because we have more inflation, but inflation is useful for the country. I mean, they mint and they, because they create in debt, yes, with providers, and they need money to pay them. So changing, we do need this, but we need this not because government will do it. Eventually, in those countries where this is inflation is a tool, you need the people to decide to go into this. You can't expect the government to do it. So I think that revolution in the way I like it will come in Latin America. Adoption in the way we expect, like following the leading of El Salvador, could occur anywhere.
All right, we've got about 10 seconds. Where can people get tickets to La BitConf El Salvador?
www.labitconf.com.
Fair enough. Rodolfo Andragnes, thanks for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max. Always a pleasure.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Rodolfo from La BitConf. Until next time, bye, y'all.